Hey guys, Jeffrey from Headstrong Training Systems here. So today we're going to be taking a look at the deadlift, and in particular we're going to be taking a look at the hinge and addressing a common issue where people often report that they've run out of room in their hamstrings. So that they're trying to hinge and that suddenly their hamstrings feel tight, their hamstrings get tight very quickly, and they're unable to push the hips back even more, the hips back more. So before we get into addressing the issue of whether it's actually hamstring immobility or another underlying issue, wink, it's the underlying issue. I just want to firstly talk about why the hinge is so important. So the hinge is essentially how we get from our standing position, from starting locked out here and getting into our bottom position where we're going to start the movement. Now what the hinge does is basically it maintains the barbell over us relative to our body, over our center of mass, and it puts us into an optimal starting position, because in the deadlift, if the starting position that you get into is essentially the position that your torso and your body will maintain throughout the movement. So if the starting position is not executed correctly, then obviously this is going to leak into the carrier of your movement and you're going to leak energy. So, and the reason for that is because it's very hard, then becomes very hard to manipulate your body under load. So say if you're starting in a flex position, it then becomes very hard, almost impossible to actively extend your torso and correct that positioning when you're under load. So that's why it's so important that the hinge is executed correctly and we get into the best starting position we can. So the issue that we'll be addressing today is basically the lack of a hinge, or so when the instances where you've got an individual performing the hinge, and you can see that they are trying to perform the hinge, they are trying to push the hips back, but they seem to run out of room, as in they stop the hinge prematurely. So say this is the same position, they push their hips back, but then they say this is as much as they can hinge. The hamstrings get all tight, and the hamstrings do get tight, and they can't hinge anymore. And from here, they think they've hinged, you've pushed their hips back, and from here, they're gonna load down into a midfoot. And what's gonna happen is there's gonna be a few symptoms that's gonna expose that there's an issue with the hinge. So because when you don't hinge enough, so they stop prematurely because the hamstrings have gotten tight. From here, as they're loading into the midfoot, you're often going to see that the pelvis will dump under you, so that you're hinging down, the pelvis will round under you, or you're going to see that they run out of room, and then what they do is they're going to reach prematurely for the barbell, and that's going to round the upper back. So those are some common symptoms to keep an eye for that will give you an indicator that there is a problem with the hinge. But the biggest giveaway that there's an issue with the hinge is simply maintaining center of mass, because we know that in the bottom position, ideally we want the barbell over midfoot, and if I was to draw a vertical line from the barbell up, the barbell will be sitting just under the armpit. So if when I get into that bottom position, that this armpit, you'll see that in people that don't hinge enough, it's behind the barbell. And so what that means is because they haven't hinged enough, when we hinge, the torso will come down, because that's simply a counter product of the hips going back. The torso will come down. And so in order for us to get our armpit over the barbell, there needs to be enough of a hinge to bring that torso down. And so if we see that the barbell is, if the armpit is behind the barbell, then that's an indicator that there was enough of a hinge. That's the biggest giveaway. Now onto the juicy part of the video. If you're an individual who's reporting that you're getting very tight in your hamstrings from your hinge, and you physically can't push the hips back even more, most likely it's not a case of you having very tight hamstrings, but rather it's a problem with your knees. Now, what's most likely happening is when you're going to push the hips back, the knees are locked out and fully extended, because yes, we don't want knee travel to occur during the hinge. During that initial break with the hinge, it's a pure hip movement. But the common mistake is that the knees are left fully extended and locked, like on leg press, fully locked out. And from here, because the knee is locked and when you push the hips back with the knees locked, the shins are going to go back as well. So, and when this happens, you're trying to push back, you're going to run out of room in the hamstring straight away. I'll switch to the side view here for you guys. So now we're going to be taking a look at the side view, and it will be most apparent from the side view that if during in my standing position, my knees are locked and I'm forcing extension, so full lockout, when I'm pushing the hips back, I'm not sure if you can see my cat going in the frame, but if I try to push my hips back and I keep the knees locked, you see that as the hips go back, the knees go back, and my shin angle, my shins also go back as well. And so that's probably the reason where you're running out of room in your hamstrings. So what we do to combat that issue, simply when we first perform the hinge, we want to leave the knees unlocked. And when I say that, I'm not saying that we want knee flexion. I'm just saying we want the knees to be unlocked remotely, so just a little unlock. And then from here, you're going to maintain your shin angle and you're going to maintain your knees. And so you see it from here, as I go to push the hips back, you'll see that I get so much more room. And from here, then before I feel the stretch in my hamstrings, and then I can load down into my midfoot and let the knees travel. So you can see how much of a change it makes when I simply leave the knees unlocked. And then from here, just remember, don't let the knees and shins go back with you. Now you're anchoring and you're rooting your knees and shins into the angle that they're currently in, and you're separating the hip joint from there. And in this position, you can see that I can hinge so much more to get down compared to if I was to leave my knees locked out compared to that. So it's all about leaving the knees unlocked. So that's all from me today, guys. Hopefully that's helpful for you, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take care.